So welcome everyone to hopefully your last session of the day. I'm Jonathan Rendy, our SVP of Products at PagerDuty. I've been with the company about 7+ years. If you are looking for the modernizing digital operations for efficiency and resilience, you are in the right place. If you're not looking for that, don't leave, just stay. We're nice and friendly, and I think you'll learn something from it. So really looking forward to the conversation. I'm honored to have a couple of our partners and customers here, Sean, who we'll get into introductions in a minute, and Jacob as well, to talk a little bit about exactly that, modernizing digital operations and what it takes to improve resilience, to really focus on efficiency. And it's a little hard, we've learned over the years, to talk about those kind of things without also talking about a lot of the manual activities that your teams get engaged in operations, and how automation, and who doesn't talk about AI, but I think there isn't a better use case for AI than in operations when there are disruptions, when there are unplanned work activities. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. And what I'm going to try to do is save a few minutes at the end so we can open it up for some Q&A for everyone here. So if you do want to move further in, feel free. But if you just want to sit and kind of be in the wings, that's fine too. But we do want to save some time for that. So let's start with introductions. Again, I'm very excited and honored to have Jacob Osterman, who's the VP of Technology for Trimble. He leads horizontal engineering. You're going to have to explain what horizontal engineering is.
And I haven't updated my LinkedIn in 2 years, so I have a little bit more of a title now.
Awesome.
Or longer title, not more of a title.
And I'm also joined by Sean Arledge from Sling TV. Sean is the Executive Director of Incident Management. Sean, you're not going to have to explain incident management.
I think it's self-explanatory.
Well, maybe. You never know. You never know. So, Jacob, let's start with yourself.
Sure.
What your role, your responsibilities are, and what's changed in the last year.
My name is Jacob Osterman, or Jakob Österman, if there are any other native Swedish speakers in here. I'm the Vice President of Digital Transformation and Horizontal Engineering at a company called Trimble. And if you're not familiar with Trimble, we're basically a Fortune 500 company that focuses on getting technology, helping classical industries like construction, transportation, and agriculture move from the physical to digital world. And we do that by bringing technology solutions to. Sorry, let me get some water here.
Drink the water.
Yeah. So bringing technology solutions to our customers, and we help them be more productive, work safer and greener. And
the horizontal. What's the horizontal?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So basically,
fascinated with that.
So basically, I get basically two things. It's funny when you have internal titles for stuff, but basically my job is to lead our digital transformation, which is in a nutshell modernizing our digital ecosystem. So connecting our stuff and making it easy to do business with Trimble. And the horizontal part is I oversee all our common functions in engineering and business systems. So stuff like cloud operations fall into that category, right? Cloud platform and a bunch of other things.
A lot of the typical SRE responsibilities, some of those, or no?
Yeah, absolutely. They all fall into cloud operations.
Oh, super. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome. Appreciate it. Sean, over to you.
So it's
roles, responsibilities, and what's changed in the last year?
a lot has changed. I was here a year ago, and even from a conference standpoint, I think everybody last year kind of had this feeling that everybody had just scrambled and added AI at the last minute to the end of all of their topics. And this year it feels actually a little bit more real, like there's some substance to it. So hopefully we continue with some of that substance of how we're actually leveraging it a little bit. So I run incident management operations, like you said. It's for Sling TV as well as Dish Broadcast. And so it's an interesting dual role because we have a very traditional dish satellite TV business that a lot of the technology, although it's cutting edge and we're still launching satellites into space last year and next year again, and but it's still relatively stable technology and known technology. And then we have Sling TV, which is a fast-moving OTT platform with a lot of cutting-edge technology and a new tech stack built on it. And doing incident management in both of those worlds is very different. And so there's some complexities that come with being kind of a shared service between those two. And then it's always exciting in incident management. And when we'll dig into a little bit more, but certainly the AI ops functionality for us, we play around with generative ops or generative AI, and but the AI ops functionality for us from an efficiency, not just like a people headcount perspective, but when we have outages, whether it's news, sports, or entertainment, like people care about those things like passionately, so passionately. And so seconds really, really count. And so the AI ops model for us is shaving those seconds, those minutes down to seconds. And that's incredibly important for us. So again, that's one thing we can dig into a little bit more here.
No one's ever experienced the very end of a game when everything's riding on it and the signal goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah, no bueno. So just another couple of questions about roles and responsibilities for both of you. When you think of a traditional kind of unplanned work and the organization you set up for it with your level 1 and your level 2 and your service owners, your experts, talk a little bit about how you set that up in your organization. Is it centralized? Is it decentralized? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, we have a centralized team for kind of level 1 and 2, and then thanks to PagerDuty, we'll escalate to the right people within divisions. Trimble has well over 500 customer-facing applications, so yeah, getting to the right people in the right time zones is obviously key.
Perfect. So centralized, and your L3, L4 are more distributed in that way.
It's a little bit of a mix in the L3. We got some of those teams centralized and some are that's kind of optional. We have a team for that.
Nice. How about at Sling?
So similar, we had two distinct businesses for a long time with Sling and Dish. And again, we kind of did this internal merger and pushed those two companies together, those two business units together. And with that, we've got an SRE model and a DevOps model that a lot of people, they maintain their code and maintain their services and their servers. And so from a tier 1, they still receive the majority of their critical alerts simultaneous to us as an incident management team. And that's really critical for us too, because we don't want to be the slow point in getting that engagement. But with that, the tier 1 we did centralize, so all of our video operators run through me, and then again we have separate tier 3 and tier 4 and some specialized departments that are really critical to have the access. Practicality, I think, is a big thing in a lot of these conversations. Is like we don't do everything perfect. Like we started and we stumbled, and when we first used PagerDuty, we literally used it as like a Rolodex of just like names and phone numbers, and then we would just call phone numbers off of that. And so the engagement piece is a big part of it, and it takes a while to just, one, organizationally, I think what you're getting at is organizationally structure yourself to match the technology. And for me, you lead transformation. So much of it is people rather than the technology. Often the technology is the easiest piece. It's the people and the organizational structure that's so hard. So that's what I get excited about talking about. But the technology is really cool because it pushes some of that organizational change that I think is really important.
Makes sense. So Jacob, the last year, as Sean was saying, a lot of changes. Kind of interested to understand we have done some surveys on our side that says the number of customer impacting issues have grown, is it 43%, Jesse? 43%, the owner of the survey. So 43%, so clearly people are being impacted more. Were there any notable issues or challenges that you ran into in the last year, and how did you manage it?
Yeah, well, the first answer is yes. Certainly well, and to add to that, I think the trend it's not like it was flat and then this year it went up and then now it's flat again, right? It's continuous. Like everything gets more interconnected. The capabilities in the cloud gets more, get more capable, and all that leads to more complexity in the back end, right? So yeah, it certainly adds up in the back end, and this year felt particularly hard when you have stuff like the CrowdStrike taking half the world down and a couple of hundred other applications down in about one big swoop, right? It certainly leaves some lasting memories.
So I'm curious, given the transformation and what you drive at the organization, and given an outage that affects hundreds of apps in Trimble, have you changed anything in the before versus the after?
Yeah, we already had a pretty capable global kind of escalation model for these type of outages. Obviously, we learned a lot, and there was a lot of confusion because it was CrowdStrike. It's like, is it a security incident or is it a cloud incident? And it's a cloud incident, but it was with so our CISO got pulled in quite a bit and at the point in the right direction. So it was kind of chaotic, right? But yeah, I mean, it was good to have everything automated in PagerDuty so we could wake up the right people in the right places and so forth.
Makes sense. How about from the Sling world in the past year? Any major kind of disruptions that weren't planned for that you kind of did a before and after? You changed your practices?
Yeah, I mean, we try and do our best to follow good development principles. So we do retros on all of our incidents and follow the ITIL model with our incident managers. And we have a distinguished incident management group that run all of our high severity incidents. So we unfortunately, we make changes all the time, so we break stuff all the time, so we have incidents all the time. And that's just the nature of it. We had a amazing Monday morning meeting this morning and recap of last week, and a great holiday week where nobody was making any changes, and so no incidents. So it's fabulous. But we'll go back to making changes this afternoon and this evening and onward, and we will break some stuff and we'll have to do retros about that. I think the biggest changes that we've consistently see is that we could solve it faster if we could have seen it sooner. And that's a far too common, especially with all of the observability tools that we have out there. And often we find out that maybe we had it instrumented and maybe we had the monitoring in place, but maybe somebody missed it. And maybe there was too much noise and they missed it. Or maybe it was just set at the wrong criticality and they missed it. So oftentimes that's the biggest piece for us. We also have disparate systems or disparate teams still, even though you try and consolidate them. And so when you have monitoring tools across your stack and they don't really talk to each other, unless you have a tool that helps serve as that aggregator, you get blind spots all the time. And one team might get alerted on something, and we often see this as the case, and they're like, well, my service, it'll be fine. But they don't realize that downstream 2-3 services later, they're really impacting somebody. So like you said, the more complex things get, the more complex the solution needs to be. Yeah. And our human brains are only going to be able to keep up with so much and process so much at the right rate. So again, the AI conversation for me is incredibly important. And I think we're just kind of touching on the edges of it still.
So I like the last point and was going to have a follow-on kind of question for you to share with the folks here. Given what you all have done, how you've evolved some of your work with AI, some of your work with automation, and given the structure where you said you've got centralized L1, L2, and then distributed, the experts, are somewhat distributed. How do you see the automation and the AI helping both of those segments? Because we've had a theory for a long time that if you can codify some of the expertise and give it to people earlier, you can prevent, you can address issues, you can but how has it played out at Sling?
Yeah, the AI conversation is so interesting because I found my experience is if I lead with saying AI, a lot of people bring a lot of their baggage, good or bad, into the conversation. And so it's really hard to say, well, with AI we do this, and then all of a sudden their mind goes 10 different directions. And so instead, a lot of times with our engineers now, who understandably in some cases are maybe the most threatened by AI from a job security basis, right? Similar to what automation was when automation really started to take hand, right? And so the conversation with engineers is less about AI. It's less about them having to do something else. It's more about how can my small, nimble team start to implement a few things that take the pressure or the ease or some of the toil off of the engineers. And so I really try and solve that piece for them. Them getting alerted, like them being engaged, the big value statement for me is like, I'm not going to wake you up for the wrong thing. Like, I'm going to do my absolute best to only wake you up for the right things. So I just ask that you give me some information about what services you maintain, help me groom and refine the alerts a little bit so that I make sure that I'm only waking you up for the right things. But that's really the conversation with them. From a growth perspective, like I said, we used PagerDuty as a Rolodex. I'm not going to do like a PagerDuty sales pitch, I promise. But I'll just say like it really, we've had a long transformation of 18 months, 24 months of going from that to focusing on engagement, focusing on the things that distracted us from resolving things with our customers quickly, communication. It's the little things, right? Like everybody wants to get to auto-resolve, like self-healing and all of that stuff. But that's developer time, and you're trying to get developer time away from the product team. And it's just like that pull, you have to create some time and create some space for the engineers. So communication was a big piece for us. So streamlining communication to executives and stakeholders that would be blasting our engineers. What's going on with your service? Why is this down? Give me an update, all of that. So when we took that pressure off of them, it was a good partnership. So again, it was kind of just taking little bites out of it of where the pain points were. Eventually now we're able to use some AI ops. We're able to use event correlation with it and do some run deck automations off of it, some real simple based stuff that again is like toil that engineers don't want to be restarting stuff. So if I can say like, you don't have to restart this anymore, we'll just restart it first, and then if it still is a pain or broken, then we'll let you know. So it took not jumping to the end and not jumping to, hey, let's talk about AI first. It was, hey, let's talk about what do you hate about incidents? And a lot of that was doing a lot of retros and being really honest with engineers and giving them a safe space to talk about what do you really hate about the incident? Not just that something broke or somebody broke your service or did something, but what did you hate about the process of the whole thing? Again, that's the people side of it, I think, is so incredibly important.
So related question actually for both of you on this. If you're automating more, if you're trying to leverage AI, it's a means to an end. And so in some of the conversations you were having to get people through any kind of risk, any kind of fear or uncertainty that they may have with it, do you have a set of goals or objectives that you're trying to hit specifically when it comes to AI? Like I've heard people say things like, we want our developers to use X percentage of AI for productivity in their development or in operations. So I'm just curious, do you have any metrics or goals that you've set for the organization?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the important point to kind of address, which is the fear of AI in developers. Like some of them see it as a threat to their jobs, and it really isn't, right? This is going to go faster, not, and well, the threat is if you don't actually get good at it, you're going to become obsolete, because the people that are going to get good at it as these capabilities keep improving are going to be like left behind, right? So yeah, I mean, what we are focusing on across the entire engineering organization of Trimble is to make sure that you don't focus on how much more productive you are, try to measure it. Like focus on adoption and focus on is getting like training, right? So bring people on board, ignore the hype cycle, and another trend I've seen, if you look at through the entire software development life cycle, is if you look at all the elements or all the steps you do in R&D, when there's like two things that can happen at this point. Like we use AI across the board, just one way or another, but the tool providers starting to get AI into the products now, and that almost always trumps trying to use your own Gen AI engine, which is a very good thing when you don't have something. Right?
So it sounds like the value proposition to the benefits is what you were selling, not so much the, hey, we want to measure, we want to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, and every executive, like business executive that you're ever going to run into is going to want to see how many percentage. And
never heard that before.
Yeah,
never.
And actually, the vendors of these tools don't actually want you to measure it because they want to claim 50%, and it's not really there yet. Like it's not even close to that yet. It can be. It might be 100%. 5 years from now. But if you use GitHub Copilot, right, you might get on average an 8-10% increase when you start getting pretty good at it.
Right.
But it's not the 50-100% that everyone talks about. Yeah. So they don't want you to measure it. So.
Makes sense. How about at Sling? Any objectives or measures or goals for the AI side, given automation's been around for a while?
We've done a couple different forays into it with kind of innovation practices in general. And what's been cool is we've done the traditional stuff of hackathons and things like that. And the last couple of years, more and more teams have kind of gravitated to doing something with AI. And so, as long as we carve out some of the time to promote innovation, this is the hottest piece that everybody goes to. So in a lot of ways, it's similar to what we've done for a decade in making sure that innovation is part of our roadmap. It just happens that AI is a big portion of that right now. As far as the actual KPIs around it, right? If what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve with it? I don't have that with my team because we don't have enough, we don't have enough education around it collectively to know what's realistic. Like if we put something out there, would that be moonshot? Would that be really big that we would say we'd decrease something by 50% or increase it by 25? We just don't really know. So our biggest push is just to continue having conversations. So we spend a lot of time just experimenting, and that means experimenting with everything. There's so many. You use Google, you use any search, it's there. It's permeating our lives. And so just experimenting with it and having conversations is really important. Makes
sense. Over the last 6 months, we just recently came back from Dreamforce, which we were sponsors there, and such an amount of innovation and noise around agents and agentic and those kind of things on top of kind of generation 1 of generative AI. And so just curious if there's any playing in your organizations with agents, and if so, what kind of work? Or is it still kind of in the education phase?
Yes, we certainly are experimenting with it, and I was at Dreamforce too, and they talked 95% with just agents. To me, agents is a fantastic user interface for generative AI. You train an agent to do a specific thing, and it's so much easier to interact with it for humans, right? And we've been playing around with it quite a bit both on the support side, on the service side, and with Dreamforce, not with Dreamforce, with Salesforce agents.
It's kind of a tailor-made use case in that way. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that a key takeaway for me is that the closer you are to the data, the better the things are going to be. So Salesforce is going to be very good at Salesforce data. You're going to be really good at the data you have. We're going to be really good at construction AI, right? I think the generic new AI companies aren't going to go that far.
Right. How about at Sling?
Not as much. Our marketing team plays around a lot, and so I won't speak on their behalf of what they're doing, but I know
Marketing is researching more than engineering?
in a lot of ways.
Might be a first.
I know.
I mean that in the nicest possible way.
They ran a really good AI academy, and it originated out of the marketing team, and then engineering actually took part in this AI academy. And so they see the value, and I think for them, the value is so tangible in dollars that they can come up with more of those KPIs. Right. So I think that's fascinating, and it is interesting, like you said, to have somebody else driving a technology innovation outside of what would you think was the technology department.
I mean, it does feel, to your point, that there are all kinds of disruptions that happen. I think there's really something here that could change a lot of roles in the organization in a positive way.
Yep.
So let's look forward a little bit. Jacob, when you think of next year or the upcoming year, like big objectives and goals you have for the team, especially in light of the transformation you're trying to drive, have you put those in place yet? Have you shared any of those with the team?
Some of them, but I think that the general trend is that we are, like, our entire strategy is connect and scale, connect our stuff to leverage our scale. And we're really getting serious about our platform on the product level now. We've done the business systems level, going from 50 ERPs to getting close to one, not all the way there yet, and so forth. So that's really going to be like getting a business adoption on kind of our data environment and processing framework and those type of things is going to be.
Exposing more of the information in meaningful ways for those constituents, is that?
Well, using the same services instead of each application using their own little data store, because that means that nothing can actually pass between them.
Right.
I mean, we did have going back to AI, we did have a CEO level key result for this year that 90% of our engineers should be using GitHub actively.
90.
90, yeah. And we had discussed 90 to, like, he wanted 100, but very long time I used to be a robotics firmware engineer, and those guys aren't really getting that much value from it. And there's always these pockets of people that aren't, so that's why we set it there. But we're measuring it, we're running education.
And internally, do your engineering teams use Copilot, or
yeah, well, mostly, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, we do a lot of acquisitions, so you get groups that are on different stacks all the time, and you can bring them on over time.
How about goals for the upcoming year?
Yeah, I think the biggest goal that my team and I have set is, and this is a challenge, and it's something that we kind of, as an operations team, we kind of gripe about engineers or product sometimes, of like they come up with really great ideas, and then they always think about operationalizing it last, and we don't want to be folly to that as well. And so for us, it's that we've done some really cool experimenting, and we're trying to formalize, like, how does that experimentation make it into a production operational mode for us? And so that's kind of where our focus is that we've kind of opened up this door to this realm of possibility, and it's enormous. Like, there's a lot of ways you could go, a lot of directions. And now for us, it's defining what do we really want to achieve, and how do we get it to be something that is not just 5 people on my team that are experts at it, understand, but how do I get it to 25, 30, 50 people that are on that tier 1 team to understand and be utilizing it. And then from there, it's that opens this whole other door of having the conversation with executive leadership again. If you can't start with, by the way, I'm going to do this AI thing this year, and all of a sudden again, like their head goes off to the races with all of their baggage on it. So it's talking with them about how we're going to change our operational model, and this is what the outcomes are. This is what we're hoping to achieve: faster TTR, so resolving things much faster. Our TTA is decreasing with the tools that we're using. So it's telling them that, and then backing into later if they're like, how are you doing this? And you're like, oh, well, it just happens to be AI. So
any executive mandates, kind of like with Jacob's organization, as thou shalt hit 9-0 or anything like that?
we are running leaner and leaner. And so, for me, it's a cost piece of a lot of individuals on my team that, by natural attrition, I've decreased nearly 40% of my tier 1 operator staff. And we've kept the same level of customer service, customer impact, by implementing technology, process, organizational structure. So the model can happen. It totally is real. I love talking about it. I'm incredibly proud of my team for being able to do this and go through that amount of change in such a short period of time. So the mandate is always, I think, we're doing 2025 budget right now, and it's, do a little bit more with a little bit less. And so it's, can we spend a little bit more on technology to get a little bit more out of it? Can we decrease that impact on our customers that adds the value rather than decreasing anything on the operational cost? So there's some pieces there that we know if we continue the path with our observability, and I think all of us probably in here know, like when you have a tool like Dynatrace or New Relic and you start to instrument it, like you're getting millions of points of data, and you can get as much as you want on demand, but sorting through that is nearly impossible at some point. And so for us, we want to collect as much of that because it is going to get us quicker to the solution to restore our customers, but we have to have a way to actually decipher all of that noise. So for us this year, we want to ingest a lot more information. We want to maintain or improve our customer experience with it, and we want to drive value to the business. So that's either decreasing the disruption or it's decreasing some cost. And again, like our journey, I've been to a lot of these, and there's this kind of utopian of like, it's amazing, and you guys should all do it, just follow it. Like, it is painful. It is something that you should absolutely, like, I've reached out and talked to peers, and I try and get online and join groups, and I ask people, like, what are their biggest pain points? I get really humble really fast, and I go out and, like, as soon as I talk to other incident management people, they're like, oh yeah, like, that's my problem too. So there's safety and comfort in numbers. So for us, it's just being open to not having all the solutions ourselves, but also knowing that our problems aren't unique. I don't think as much you might sit out there and think it's unique. It's not, and there's a lot of people probably left and right that share some of those things.
No, a lot to unpack there.
Yeah,
all
sorry.
goodness. No, that's.
One tip on the budget process.
Yes, please.
I always we make stuff more effective, and we saved $6 million in operational costs this year. Like, that's sustainable year over year. Just retain some of that.
Yeah.
I was going to kind of ask the similar question when it comes to new technologies. Given budgets aren't getting bigger, like, how are you going about justifying? What are you looking to justify when you bring something in? And are you literally building business cases that say, I can take this much cost out if I spend this much? Or is it something other than that?
It's a second. The problem I have right now is that the same way we're all getting squeezed one way or another, right? Do more with less. And it's hard to get the people to actually do that research and spend enough time for us to go and have a business case about it, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, for us, it's, like I said, it's a lot of experimenting and trying to, kind of do what we've always talked about with our engineering teams, of learn really quickly and build a small business case off of that and extrapolate a little bit. Don't get into, I want to buy this and it's going to solve everything, and I'm going to buy all the features because I want to use all the features, but really in year one, you're going to be able to use one feature and get maybe 10% out of that. So a lot of it is being just realistic on what you're purchasing and why you're buying it and how you're going to measure what success you're getting out. And that was a big piece with a lot of our implementations, is the ones that we've done really well, we've actually gone slower with. The ones where we've abandoned partners is because we've bought too big and you don't get the value out of it, and you never get to adding C, D, E, and F on there, and you realize that you're bloated and spending too much on a bunch of stuff you're not using.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point. One of those insights that I think is key, and I hear this all the time. I know, Heath, you probably hear this too, which is if you start small and allow the organization to iterate and test and research and try and fail, you're going to get a lot more innovation. You're going to get a lot more out of it. So great insight there. I see the clock is winding down, and I do want to leave a little bit of time for open Q&A, but I guess words of advice that both of you might have for those who may not want to ask the question and learn from your experiences.
I would love some more budget advice, please.
Well, in theory, it's all easy. You just have to, no, but yeah, I guess anyone that wants to go on like an enterprise cloud operations journey, I see a lot of people really try to go for perfection before they launch it.
Yeah.
And I would say that that's the wrong approach. Just you got to launch it. You can't get it wrong anyway. Just be okay with being wrong and fixing it and iterate fast. Yeah, and don't be, a second piece of advice would be don't be afraid of the new technologies coming with AI. Experiment, try stuff out, let engineers and operations people play out, and then just find the wins, celebrate the wins, and spread the word and get excited, like people excited about like change management, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
I always, because I think we sometimes overlook it. I think you don't because you're a change agent also, but the people side of things is so important. And just my advice is just don't get too excited about the technology. Always stay more excited about the people and trying to understand like what is their experience with the technology, what might be some of the barriers holding them back or getting them excited. We talk about the change curve all the time with my team because we are constantly in flux, and we kind of like point it out very, very clearly of like, I'm over here, or I'm down here in the pit of despair, and it sucks right now. Like, I'm really upset, and I thought everything would be better, and it's not yet. And so we talk really openly about the change dynamics. And with the way the world is so rapidly coming at us, I find that slowing down and talking to the people is just so incredibly important. And the technology coming at us all the time, it's easy to forget that and just talk tech.
Yeah, I think the people-to-machine interface always will be important as a part of this, along with the experimentation mindset. So, no, I love that. All right, I think we're about at time, and I want to thank you both for joining us and sharing some of your experiences with the rest of the audience here. I want to invite all of you to please not only go to the keynote tomorrow. I think there'll be some interesting announcements that are made there that involve PagerDuty and AWS, but also come down to the booth, and we can demonstrate a little bit more if you have some time on the show floor. And again, Jacob, Sean, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.